Readers in the room, classic literature, am I alone? Okay. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sara Chambers, and I own a creative studio called Elly and Nora Creative. We do full service creative, but we primarily build and activate brave, bold, and brag-worthy brands. A little bit about me is that I love alliteration, as you can hear in that BBB. I love collaborating, coffee, and community. I'm a huge fan and advocate for the Oxford comma. Do not fight me on that. And before I founded Elly and Nora Creative, I spent my career in lots of different places doing communications, from email marketing to public relations and everything in between. I am a Sun Devil from the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communications. I also got my minor in theater performance, so public speaking is, kind of my jam. If you want to connect with me, I threw out my Instagram social handles. That's usually where I hang out, Instagram and LinkedIn. So please feel free to connect with me there. So we are having a conversation around personal branding today. And really what I want to do is really set the tone for what personal branding is and what it isn't. Has anybody in the room felt like when you hear the word personal branding that it kind of feels gross, kind of feels icky, or like ego-driven, or like, I don't really want to post a bunch of selfies of myself in my car and on the internet. Anybody? Anybody have ever felt like that? Like personal branding is kind of a little gross, right? So my goal for us today is to be able to transform the conversation around personal branding and take it from a place that's ego-driven and move it into a place that is service-driven. So that when you show up in your fullness, when you show up in your authenticity, when you show up fully as you are in your personal brand, you are actually inviting other people to connect with you and to do business with you that is in service of their needs, right? I like to say that if you don't solve a problem, you have a hobby. Hard truth, yeah. If you don't solve a problem, you have a hobby and not a business. So when you choose not to put yourself out there, you are removing the opportunity to solve someone else's problem, that they really need it. We're in the business of transforming people's lives, and if you haven't figured out how to bring that sort of depth and weight to your business yet, then we should definitely talk more. So really today, I want you to learn to leverage your authenticity. So the things that I'm hoping that we can do today is better understand what a personal brand is, understand why that is important, why you should care about what a personal brand is. I want you to figure out how you can start to take steps on intentionally creating your own. And then I also want you to figure out how to leverage that personal brand to create expertise and trust in order to grow your audience. Or track? Any thumbs up? Okay. So let's start out. What is a personal brand? So there's lots of definitions about what this is, but this is how I like to define it. It's an intentional and authentic expression of what you know, what you believe, and what matters to you as perceived by other people. I like this little quote by someone who might know something about branding. Jeff Bezos, your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room. So a lot of times we can basically just replace personal brand with reputation. So now, all of a sudden, it's not about you being ego-driven. It's not about you posting selfies of yourself in your car. Listen, like do that. I do that. It's fine. But it's not about that anymore. It is about managing your reputation in service of your business. Can we all get on board with that? Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm going to throw some quotes at you or some statistics. These were all done by a research study by Brand Builders Group, personal branding company. 74% of Americans are more likely to trust someone who has an established personal brand. We are all in this room because we know that that is true. When you show up, when you meet people, when you shake someone's hand, when you look them in the eye, that is a part of building your personal brand, and that part is trust. And trust is a critical element of doing business no matter what industry that you're in. So, why that matters is personal branding is in fact the future of doing business. This next generation, who has massive buying power, actually cares about this. So it's smart for us to take this into consideration. The trendsetters, the people who are going to have massive buying power and making buying decisions across all industries, want to consider personal branding as a part of their decision-making process. More than 50% of Americans believe that it's important for their banker, doctor, insurance agent, financial advisor, lawyer, fill in the blank, to have an established personal brand. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, it doesn't matter if you own your own business, or if you're an executive within an existing corporation, having a personal brand is not just a nice to have anymore, it's actually a crucial element of your overarching communication strategy. Personal branding is highly profitable. This is not just fluff. Again, this is not something that you're like, we'll think about implementing that. I think that, that might be something the kids are doing it these days. This is a highly profitable strategy that needs to be implemented into your marketing and communications, because 67% of all Americans would be willing to spend more money on the products and services from companies of founders whose personal brand aligns with their own personal values. Who here is familiar with Patagonia? Everyone, I hope. It's a pretty big company. One of my absolute favorite case studies for personal branding, and branding in general, actually. When you know what the company stands for, and when you can see that the leadership of that company is walking in alignment with those brand values, if that aligns with who you are and what you care about in the world, you're going to spend more money at that brand than you would somebody else. Because we feel naturally attracted, we feel naturally drawn, and we feel naturally connected to how that company does business. Gone are the days of no transparency, right? When we could just do business and be a little shit, not that we wanted to, but businesses are doing a little shady business behind the scenes, not treating their employees well, not living up to their brand values. And it wasn't really in the public consciousness, right? We didn't know about it. And now everything that you do has the potential to end up online, and online lives forever, right? So making sure that we are walking the walk, but also making sure that we clarify who it is that we are so that we can live out in alignment to them. All right, tracking on that? Another stat for you, 62% say that having testimonials, is the most important factor when deciding who to purchase from. We all know this is true. Who has testimonials on their website right now? Who uses testimonials to leverage getting more business? We do all of the time. Because if you don't know me and I can leverage social proof from our previous clients to say Sara is legit, she knows what she's talking about, she does what she says she's going to do, even if you don't know that person personally, that means something to you, right? You already know this is true. Personal branding. All right, it's a trust accelerator. 82% of Americans agree that companies are more influential if their executives have a personal brand that they know and follow, right? This is so apparent, even in a lot of case studies that we're looking at today. Who is familiar with Sara Blakely? She's like, I had on girl crushes, it's not because her name is Sara, but that helps. Sara Blakely, if you don't know, is the previous founder she is the founder of Spanx, and she recently sold the company for, some ridiculous amount of billions of dollars. People know Spanx because of Sara. And if you look at their social media, the account that gets the most engagement, the account that builds the most brand equity for Spanx is Sara. The products are great. But it's because of her. It's because of her tenacity and how she shows up. Gary Vaynerchuk fans in the room? Anyone? Follow him? Gary Vaynerchuk has more influence as a personal brand than VaynerMedia, than his companies. They doing fine, don't get me wrong, they're doing just fine. But him showing up as a human, as a personal brand, is able to propel the success of his businesses in a way that if he was a silent CEO or nobody knew who his name was, it wouldn't have the same impact, right? It's good for us to look at case studies in the market of CEOs and leaders who are leading their company with a personal brand parallel to their corporate company, okay? So I want you to consider, why does this matter? Plain and simple. Who has heard this term before, that people buy from who they know, they like, and they trust, right? This isn't revolutionary, but a successful personal brand is what is going to help you build all three of these things. So let's start thinking about building your personal brand. I really like this picture. I wanted you to really think about standing out, because that's what the point is. So how do we craft a personal brand that will establish trust with your ideal audience, that is authentic to you? So I'm going to walk you through 3 steps for creating a magnetic personal brand. This first one, this is the deep part, guys, where it gets juicy. Develop your brand story is the first step. Now, developing your brand story is where you really are going to start to dig deep. This is where you're going to establish your things like your personal values, your purpose, your why, and really better understand how your lived experience can help tell the story of what it is that you're trying to do in the world. This creates your message and is the foundation for how you're going to show up in the world, what you're going to say, and the impact that you're going to make, right? I like to say that this is the nitty-gritty of personal branding work, because personal branding is actually a story and an exercise in personal transformation. When we say that we build brave and bold and brag-worthy brands, you're brave in that and you're bold in that, because putting yourself out there is an act of courage. Being able to say, this is who I am, and this is what I believe, and these are my big ideas about what it is that I do. Some people aren't going to like you. Some people are not going to connect with you. Some people are not going to understand you. And you have to have the courage enough to step into the light, to be seen, and have the courage that some people are just going to not understand and they're not going to get it. And that's okay. Because what we want to do is start to operate from a place of expansion and not from a place of scarcity. Because there's so much business to be had that if you need branding and you show up to this presentation and you're like, I don't know, like, Sarah's not my person, right? I'm not the only branding person out there. There are millions of us, right? But if I show up and I put myself in the shadows in the corner and I don't come fully, I'm never going to get the chance. I'm never going to be able to connect with the people that are like, Sarah's my girl. I can see that she knows what she's talking about. I feel connected to her. I can see that we vibe a little bit. Like, some of this is just energetic and intuition, right? But if you hide yourself in the shadows, you're never going to give yourself a chance. You're never going to have opportunity to connect with people that you can show up and serve and transform their lives via your business and your services, okay? So this is the deep work. When we do this work, we have to hold an immense amount of space and emotional intelligence, because oftentimes when we do this work, this is the first time that someone has had full permission to step into the light, to be seen, and to accept that they can be successful by showing up exactly as they are, rather than trying to manipulate themselves into a box of what they've been told of what it looks like to be successful, right? I showed up here in my boots and my hat and my crystal earrings, right? Like, that is not a picture of entrepreneurship for the last 20 years. But it is changing, because there's room for you to show up in this space exactly as you are, because lots of different types of people need exactly what it is that you do. Okay? Alright, so the next step to building a magnetic personal brand is the look and feel. We process visual information 60,000 times faster than the written word. So the colors you use, the style you embody, and the energy that you bring will communicate who you are before you even open your mouth. When you walk in a room, your essence, how you show up, things like, I have bright red hair, and I'm never going back, because the conversation starters that it has created for me, right? And it's just like, see, hello, red hair ladies in the room, like, we know how it is. It has become and it seems frivolous, guys, but it has become an essential part of how I show up visually in the world, because people remember me. I have people who walk in the room and they go, all I did was scan the room and look for your hair, and I found you. Right? It seems so silly, but how you show up, the style, the point is not to blend in the shadows. I want you to make bold decisions and show up in your authenticity exactly as you are, both in message as well as visual, right? And the third thing is you gotta put yourself out there. So creating a powerful and impactful personal brand means that you have to build expertise both in person and online. Sorry, I know a lot of you are still kind of coming around to that idea, but building authority over time is done through the consistent, regular, and strategic communications that you put out. Hint, this means putting out content. So, what I want you guys to do and think about, and not even necessarily right now, but as you go about your day, is I want you to do a digital audit. If I looked you up online right now without knowing you, what conclusions do you think that I would make about you? If I Googled you, if I looked at your social media, if I looked at your website, and I didn't know anything else about you, what conclusions would I draw? Do all of your platforms tell me a dynamic story about who you are, what you know, what you care about, or are you just asking for the sale online every single time? Nobody wants to be sold to, but everybody wants to buy. So, showing up on social. Here are some quick thoughts about how you can do that, how you can get started. I want you to choose your platform. You do not have to be 100% on every single platform right out the gate. But I want you to pick the ones where your audience is showing up the most, and I want you to go all in on creating content there. I want you to cover your categories. So what this means, and we can go into this a little bit more in depth if you have more questions, but once you create your platform of choice, I want you to show up in a variety of ways. This means not just showing up and selling. If you're a real estate agent, I'm gonna pick on you for a minute. Sure. If I'm a real estate agent, I'm gonna show you houses. Yeah, I'm gonna show you what is on the market. I'm gonna sell. I'm gonna move that content forward. But if she just shows me houses, this is a house content. This is a house account. I don't know anything about you. And if I'm gonna enter into a relationship and working with you, I'm gonna have to work with you for a while, right? Like I'm gonna have to spend time with you in the same space. I'm gonna have to trust you. It's a big decision. You better bet that I better like her. And if she shows up online, she shows me who she is, what she cares about, and her expertise, I'm gonna have a much easier decision reaching out to her and wanting to do business with her, especially if when I meet her, I'm like, oh yeah, she's exactly who she is online. My goal is if you see me online, I never want you to meet me in person and be like, man, I don't know, she just like wasn't the same, right? Regardless of whether you like me or not, I want you to be like, yep, that's exactly who I expected, okay? But we can't do that if we're only showing up in one category. You have to create intentional categories for the type of content that you're putting out so you can show up as a three-dimensional human. Original content. Yes, there's trends for sure. We all see people, but you know, like say the same TikTok video and the same like song like 100 times and you're kind of over it, right? The content that gets our attention is the people who are being original. The people who are maybe even taking those ideas and translating them for their own expertise. The people who are coming up with their own original ideas for how to disseminate this information. Right? So I want you to focus on creating original content that is true to you, your personality, your expertise. And remember, you are who you say you are, right? You have the power to decide how you show up. I like to say that branding is a lot like company culture. It can create itself or you can create it, but either way you're gonna have one. So today, right now, you have a personal brand. Is whether or not you're deciding to be intentional and strategic about driving that narrative or if you're letting it drive yourself. So I want to remind you, above all else, that as you're crafting this, you have the power. You have the empowerment and the ability to decide what that narrative is and move that position forward. Because if I meet someone and you said, hi, I'm a real estate agent, I'm gonna be like, no, you're not. I don't believe you, show me proof. No one is doing that. Mm-hmm. When you show up and you say, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is my expertise, most people are gonna be like, great, nice to meet you, I wanna hear more about that. So you have the power to decide, but if she showed up and she was like, kind of down, I don't know, like I'm not gonna have any idea what she does. You get to decide, so you drive the narrative. So when you're building your business, I want you to ask yourself these 3 questions. What does my digital presence say about me currently? Am I actively working to write my own narrative? And what would it look like if I intentionally architect a message for myself instead of letting others decide what it is that I'm known for? And I leave you with this one. If people like you, they will listen to you, but if they trust you, they will do business with you. All right, so you guys have questions that I can answer about personal branding or branding in general. I'm happy to do that.
Nice job, Sara.
Yeah.
So since we're on the topic of social, are there branding messages that you're like, these are absolute no-nos, like in 2023? Like, these are things, because we live in Arizona, I feel like we kind of live in a bubble where the rest of the country is like not, but Arizona's full of tourism, and I think we sometimes forget that. So sometimes I think maybe we're like insensitive to some of the things that are kind of going on. Are there hot topics you see people doing in branding that you're like, maybe steer this way instead? Or is that like, you're like, you know what, if it's your authentic self and that's what you want to be known for, then pedal to the metal?
What I would say is commit. Right? What I would say is commit. Don't be wishy-washy. Don't be in the murky middle. If you hold an opinion and you are like, that's who I am, this is what people are going to experience of me, and you want to stake that in the ground, then just stick to it and be willing to be unliked, right? However, sometimes, like so for example, when we do categories and content strategy with our clients, we like to think of things in like buckets. So like, think of these buckets at the bottom, and your whole life is this massive filtration system that is going into these buckets, right? I can be argued with about how many buckets there are, but typically we like to think about it in terms of 5. And 4 of those buckets are public, and 1 of them is sacred. So just because that's who you are and the opinion that you have doesn't mean that that necessarily has to show up online. And it doesn't mean that that's not authentic to you, but it just means that you're being super intentional about what it is that you want to share. And it's okay that some stuff is sacred. It's about being strategic and intentional. So a good example is, I've been married for 15 years and I have a 9-year-old son. I post about my family sometimes, like on my Instagram stories here and there. It's part of my life. But what I'm not doing is being like, here's 5 tips for being a great parent, right? Because I don't have any desire to be known for being a good parent. That's a part of my life, naturally, sure, but I'm not trying to establish expertise in that area. So what I want to be known for is deeply tied to the content that I put out. Does that make sense? So my family, well, again, while they show up, they're not like secret. They show up here and there. This is my natural life. That's more my sacred bucket, right? It's like, I'm super intentional about how I show up there. But my buckets are like, I'm going to talk about branding every day, all day long. That's my expertise. I'm going to bring that to you. That is my biggest bucket. What I care about is another bucket. I care about women in business. I care about empowering women to be entrepreneurs and showing up in their authentic self. That's another bucket. So I'm spending a lot of my time in those 2 buckets. It doesn't mean that that's not a part of my life. It just means that I'm intentionally choosing not to share that. Does that answer your question?
That's good.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the look and feel and be bold, but do you need to dress for your profession?
I think the rules are changing, and I think you need to know your audience. The type of client that I'm trying to attract is generally not a man in a suit. Just not going to be my person, right? If that person came to me and was like, I really want your help, then cool, like I'm not turning away, but that's not the person I generally attract. So I want you to know your audience. I want you to know how you can attract the audience that is authentic to you. So for us, there's kind of always been 2 ways about thinking about branding. I can know my audience and manipulate myself into a box to try to like be attractive to that type of person. People are going to see right through that real quickly. But the other way, and the way that we do it, is how can I bring clarity and understanding and discovery to how I show up in the world naturally and then invite the right type of people to be drawn and attracted to me, so much easier, so much more flow. It's kind of like that, if you don't lie, you don't have to remember what it is that you said. I don't have to worry about how am I showing up today? Am I going to be too much for the people in this room? I'm just being here exactly as I am. And if you like that, and if you're drawn to that, then that is naturally going to create business for me. And if you're not, it's totally okay. So I would say, know your audience, know yourself. Who else? No one? Yes.
Right. So for myself right now, I'm transitioning from out of the classroom in public education and all my side gigs that I had associated with that into building a business that's kind of twofold. Like I'm still keeping the pet care and like doing doggy daycare and dog boarding and adding some stuff to that. However, I'm also moving into doing like phototherapy and wearable healthcare devices. So do I create one brand and figure out how to put those together, or is it two separate brands, and how do you manage that?
Just bringing me all the strategy questions this morning, huh? I get it, and that can feel really conflicting because there's these two sort of opposing businesses. But what you probably need to do is start thinking about your personal brand as running parallel to your corporate and your business brand and not being synonymous. So some of us, if we're real estate agents, if we are doctors, like your brands are yourself. You have your personal brand and you're not creating like an additional level of content for your corporate brand. Like you're synonymous with your business, right? For me, my personal brand and my agency brand, there's ties and bridges because I created it for sure, but they are separate, right? So they run parallel to each other. So what I'd say is it's likely that you need to create some corporate brand structure for the businesses, and then for your personal brand, feel like what is the thread that ties it together? What is your main message? What are you trying to do in the world that might pull in these different areas, and then create your personal brand from that place instead of trying to make it make sense with these different pieces of your business. Does that help?
Yeah.
We can talk about it more, but generally, yes.
When you were working in an industry where there's a lot of direct competition, what are some suggestions for setting yourself apart so that people are coming to you and considering you, as opposed to
Someone else.
one of the million other options they have out there?
Yeah, absolutely. So that is the power of branding. That is exactly what it is that we do, is we figure out what is it that makes you unique. That's actually a positioning question. So what is it in the world that you bring that is totally different, that no one else can do? So I like to think about the 3 M's. So there's message, medium, and messenger, right? And if the message is the same and the medium is the same, the messenger is still totally different. So I could get up here and I could tell you I could give you this presentation, and then 10 minutes from now, Amber could get up here and just as an example, anybody can get up here and give you this presentation, and the people who hear it, that it went over their head when I gave it, and they heard it from someone else, it's because there was a unique connection that they had. There was some way that they said it, some word that they used, some way energetically that they showed up in the world that I didn't, that they're going to connect to that person versus me. And it's not that I did a bad job, it's just that we're going to connect to different people. So part of it is understanding exactly what it is that makes you different and embracing that as leverage rather than a liability. So who am I that I'm different? How can I show up differently? Do I have a different offer? Do I have a different lived experience or backstory? Do I have a unique personality? Who is familiar with Dollar Shave Club? I like case studies are like my favorite thing, right? They showed up on the market, and this is obviously not a personal brand, but the metaphor still tracks. They showed up on the market, and they're not showing up like lit at all. They're like super hyper masculine, always got some like greasy guy on their ads with no shirt, right? Just like taking themselves super seriously. And then Dollar Shave Club shows up on the market, and they sell the same product essentially, and the differentiation was the personality. They didn't take themselves seriously. They're hilarious. Market growth. all because they decided like, hey, we don't have to show up and sell this product the same way it's always been sold. Personality was the massive differentiator in that particular story. So you've got style, you've got essence, you've got lived experience, you've got an offer, you've got something no one else has. Find out what that is and lean into it hard.
If we have time, and I don't mind volunteering my Facebook or Instagram, but if we have time, how long would you say just looking at my Facebook today, you could tell exactly what I do, and or how much time do they have? Is it usually like
You
11
have 3 seconds.
Yeah. Okay.
You have 3 seconds to convince somebody if they're going to stay on your page. Yeah, it's not long. You've got, so that means you need to be optimizing your bio, your profile picture. It better be good. Don't make it one of those weird avatars. Like, it better be your face, and it better be consistent on all of your platforms. So, and your call to action better be optimized. What do you want people to do? If you have a freebie, or you want, like, tell them what you want them to do. And your first 6 posts, I'm speaking about Instagram specifically, your first 6 posts, people are making decisions very quickly. And the thing that will kill you is confusion. So don't worry about, like, is this right or is this wrong? Worry about, am I being clear? Helpful?
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. When you're talking about like telling your personality or telling your brand, so you just brought up like this serious, like sexy sale of a man versus like the humorous, like Duluth ballroom, commercial. So can you tell us like maybe, because in my brand, bringing humor is something fun to do in a treatment, but nobody would take me seriously as a therapist coming in to treat you for dementia if I'm making jokes about it. But in my real treatment, it's really important to do because it's so stressful for people to live through every single day that when I leave, adding jokes to their day, adding new ways to handle a really terrible situation is really important. I've never really thought about adding humor into my business page.
Are you telling yourself a story that's not true?
Ooh. Maybe. Yeah, because I'm working off of a complex that's like, this is what exists.
This is what exists, this is what's expected of
That's what
me,
we're trying
and
to
this is
break.
what people will connect to. I need to be too.
Sure, you're so good. What are other ones though? So like humor, sex, like what are the, can you give us? Humor and sex. That's all I got today. So empathy, those things like.
You guys, there are endless ways for positioning, and this is it's a deep strategy in understanding what it is that makes you different. Personality is just one area for how you can show up differently. It's like one category. But I want you, like, we'll maybe talk deeper because it might need a little bit more answer. However, this whole point is to give you permission to show up how you are, because the right people, imagine for a minute that you showed up super buttoned. I don't know if this has ever happened. You showed up super buttoned up, like, I'm a very serious doctor, this is how right? And then you get in and you're like trying to crack jokes with people, and people are like, like they didn't know that that's what they're expecting. And is everybody else doing that? Is everyone else showing up as this serious button-up doctor when you have boatloads of personality? Incredible. And you tell me that like older people going through dementia don't want to crack a joke every now and again? Like, I don't know. I think you might be telling yourself a falsehood.
That's good.
Hey guys.
Anybody else?
Therapy.
Personal brand. Listen, I have been called a brand therapist, a brand doula. That one's new. Like, I was like, oh, okay. Personal, like, who else can track with this? I truly believe that entrepreneurship is personal development disguised as a business.
That's good.
This work is personal and transformative for so many reasons. So it's personal, yeah. You have to get into it. You have to get into the weeds. You have to hold space for that.
I'm just gonna need to know what's going on with these Girl Scout cookies behind me.
Those are mine.
I cannot help you with that.
How much are you
They've got a brand on lockdown. Who's seen the meme that's like, I'm not buying 12 boxes of Girl Scout cookies, I'm supporting young female entrepreneurs?
So that's
Yep, absolutely. That's a brand positioning statement, and it got you. Or got me. It's fine.
love it.
Do you guys have any other questions? I'm going to stick around for a little while if you want to talk to me one-on-one. Yes?
So you kind of touched on it before, but on your platforms, the different LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever, if you have two or multiple or different categories, insurance, lending, whatever, you create two completely different profiles, or you
No, sir.
put one profile and you kind of have them together?
No, we're going to backtrack a little bit. You don't create a different platform for your categories. You are finding ways that, like, this is the type of content that I post. So especially so we're going to talk a little bit differently because I gave you some advice that was like more in like Facebook and Instagram world, but you specifically mentioned LinkedIn. LinkedIn has personal profiles. The content that you post on your LinkedIn should be your personal brand content. It's coming from you, your name, your face. And if you scroll down on your profile a little bit, it'll say like, for me, CEO of Elly and Nora Creative, and I can click on that and I can go over to my agency Instagram or LinkedIn page. Nobody looks at that page. Nobody cares. We post content there sometimes, but like it is not a priority for us because on that platform is a personal brand, personal connection platform. So the content that comes from my page should come as a personal brand. Does that make sense? So when you were deciding like these categories of content that I want to create, that should all be coming from that platform. The only time that we're going to talk about maybe creating different platforms is when we're thinking about a corporate brand versus a personal brand, and sometimes those need to run parallel to each other. So if that corporate brand has to exist on its own entity, something like it doesn't have your name, maybe you have team members, other people need to have ownership of it, then we're talking about two brands running parallel. Does that make sense? Okay.
I'm interested, why did you name your company that?
Elly and Nora, I know, because my name's not Elly or Nora, right? You get that a lot, it's a great talking point. So, I had vision for my agency that extended beyond myself. This is not just about me and putting the attention on myself, so I did not want it to be my name. However, I do like how that sounds, right? So I chose two women that I thought embodied characteristics that mattered for the type of work that I do. So Elly is based on Eleanor Roosevelt, and Nora is based on Nora Ephron. So both of these women have qualities that I admire. We love talking to people about building a value-based brand, having advocacy. Part of your brand is not just what you do, but what you care about. And Eleanor Roosevelt was a huge advocate. She was also quite a disruptor in her time, which we tend to like. And Nora Ephron was funny. She was witty and observant, and I think that that's really important for creative work.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's say thanks to Sara.